Hello, and welcome to another episode of Puzzled Parents. We are a voice platform for those who do not have a voice, amplifying the challenges of special needs families. I'm really thrilled today to have Michele Leahy present from Leahy Life Plan, right?
Yeah.
Yes, awesome. So I'm going to introduce you to Michele and let her go ahead and tell you what she's here for and share some very good information. So, Michele, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Susan. I really appreciate you having me.
Yes, ma'am. Now, I want you to really share what it is that your company focuses on because I believe it is super important, incredibly important what you're doing to make sure that the individual with special needs is taken care of, not just after high school, but throughout their lives. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, Leahy Life Plan is a disability owned and disability operated, so 100% disability owned and 100% disability operated. All of us who work at my company are persons with disabilities who actually navigate benefits in some way, whether it is home and community based services, social security benefits, or some type of benefits at one time in our lives, or currently we navigate some type of services and benefits. And so um, we've been, and believe it or not, all of us have been disabled prior to the age of 22, which is a really big thing when you're dealing with disability and government benefit protection, meaning social security benefits protection and home and community based services known as
Mhm.
waiver protection. So what do we do? So many times, so Leahy Life Plan really is there to help coordinate and help people understand what benefits they can gain access to, and also plan for their long-term future. Everybody loves to help children with disabilities, but once you that falling off the cliff at 21
Mhm.
is a very real thing. And now many people are extending things until they're 26 because you can extend health care until
Mhm.
26, and then you have all these college programs and all of these different things. But what Leahy Lifeline really does is helps people secure services and secure benefits, as well as getting them set up and connecting them with lawyers, connecting them with financial planners, and really help them create a roadmap to benefits and to their future while creating a full life. So 90, I would say 90 to 95% of our clients work part-time in some capacity.
Mhm.
Some of them work a little bit more, but we're there to help them navigate those benefits, that SSI, that SSDI, that Medicaid, that Medicare, so they can maintain waivers. And we really help parents articulate, because many people with autism get denied
Mhm.
benefits. And so we're really there to help them really understand and articulate the struggles, because when you're in school and you're so focused on what a person is capable of doing, but when you have documentation
Mhm.
that, like IEPs and neuropsychs, that are geared towards academically focused and not life skill focused, many people get denied benefits. So what we do as a company is really help parents gather documentation and articulate that documentation and
Mhm.
create that documentation, whether it is getting new neuropsychological reports, whether it is writing narratives for social security applications, to really help them be prepared for those applications so they can really talk about all the invisible supports they're providing to them,
Mhm.
that they're not able to talk about because they're on autopilot and they're doing it all the time. So we actually are there to actually help parents get these supports in place and help them be empowered to do it, to give them the tools to do it.
That is a big, big job for sure. For sure. What would you say is the biggest reason that people will get denied?
I think it's because they don't provide enough documentation and they're also academically focused. And also, I think that when you are going to get evaluated, I many parents will complete the documentation as their child and have their child sign it. So so that in a way is, even if you're saying you're helping them, they don't know the degree of help. So if you're writing a full narrative of what they can do, we don't know the level of assistance you're helping
Right,
that person.
right.
And then I also think a lot of people get denied. Um, Many lawyers won't take these cases because they're not slam dunks.
Hmm.
Um, eh, because your documentation is old. It might be from the original diagnosis. It may be Social Security doesn't want diagnosis or documentation that's less than 2 years old. Because if you were
Hmm.
diagnosed at 10 and you're asking for benefits when you're 18 or 20,
Right.
they're not going to, unless it is a broken back or some type of physical disability where it's very concrete, like, mine. I have spina bifida. It's cut and dry. I have it. I'm in a wheelchair. I mean, it doesn't change with interventions. And the thing is that we're always told these interventions can help people with autism. And I think they do. Don't think that I don't think that. But do they
Right.
help them enough to be self supporting? Do they help them enough to be able to be self sustaining and be able to live on their own? And I'm all about protections. And I think of Frozen and Elsa. If you don't need the
Hmm.
benefits, let them go. But let's get those protections in. And then if you don't need them, then that's great. But health insurance is a big key because once you turn 26, yes, sometimes you can get extended on your parents' health insurance, but you're not going to be able to get extended once you go onto Medicare when you retire. So it's a
Yeah.
band-aid, but it's so I'm trying to fix the problem and not like put a band-aid over something that's gushing.
Right. So there's actually a couple of transition periods that you touched on. One is, of course, the one where they graduate school or leave school at most of the time. They have to leave by 22. And you have that kind of transition from, okay, we've got this nice structured daily program, and then into the kind of unknown where they don't know how to use their time or what they're using their time for, and kind of that's transition, but also the transition of the support and the primary caregivers. And I know for me, that was one area that I was very aware of because being in healthcare myself, I could see over the years, I don't want my daughter to be dependent on me because someday I'm not going to be here. And so you have that transition of not just like you were saying earlier, the parent, if they pass away, but what happens if they become aged and they have to go into a home or care facility or something like that? What's going to happen to that person? Who's going to maintain their supports and the paperwork and all the documentation that's required to keep those benefits once that primary caregiver is not able to do it for whatever reason?
And I'd like to add one other thing is that we talk so much about our kids being safe, our adults being safe, but I don't want them to just be safe. I want them to thrive and live and have autonomy. And when we're talking about people with autism that are on the fence, meaning like I call them like, the in-betweeners, that they're not severely, they're considered, they need substantial supports. But if you get them into a routine, they're able to be successful. But if you turn that kaleidoscope one little hair, then then it's, darts are looking at you and they don't know what to do or how to do it. So because parents are so used to removing the obstacles before they become obstacles,
Hmm.
that they don't even realize the 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 obstacles that are there for their children, because they've been on autopilot for so many years. And that transition age, as somebody with a disability, who was born with a disability, I understand it from the kid's perspective. I understand it from that adult's perspective. It was very hard for me to move out of my house and, figure out caregiving needs. And I
Right.
was able to articulate my caregiving needs. And with autism, is that they get so routinized and they get so stuck in their rut that
Hmm.
if it becomes a bit of a learned helplessness in a way, when that one caregiver is their caregiver for the rest of their life. Because now I'm starting it to get clients that are in their 40s and 50s that are now just recently getting diagnosed with autism, and they have parents in their 70s and 80s, and they're living like a hoarder. They are they you know they have this routine, but they're not letting it new people in, new
Hmm.
caregivers to come in, and they're going to be in such, you know, precarious situations because of that. So I really like to start early with with getting those supports into place and getting them moved out of, the parents' home by
Hmm.
age 30. And that costs money. And we're always thinking about when I die, but we're not looking at what does this person with a disability's life look like when they're 30 or 35,
Hmm.
and how can we access the SSI or the SSDI and their work income and not use it as play income to be able to live their life,
Right.
and that's what I do. I mean, I we work with financial planners that aren't just thinking about when I die and there's a big bucket of money, but it's like we need them to be autonomous now. We need
Right.
them that, I mean, I know your daughter, she lives in her own apartment and she gets supports, and she's not super high functioning. She gets staffing. And I think, I mean, that's the goal. That's the goal for all of my clients, because you're there now to be able to navigate that. And you're there now to,
Hmm.
if there's hiccups, you could correct them now instead of waiting, wishing
Right.
and hoping, and you're able to figure out what works, what doesn't work. And yes, things change, nothing stays the same,
Right.
but you're capable to put directions and supports and
Hmm.
different methods in place, so when things don't go according to plan, it's not all in your head as mom, that there's a plan in place. And that's
Right.
so important.
Absolutely. I know from my personal experience, when your child becomes an adult on the spectrum, it is so much more challenging because they are that adult and they want to be independent and they want to handle things. But when that, inch thick packet comes from, Medicaid and the different services every year, and it's overwhelming. Sometimes it's
Oh,
overwhelming for me, and I'm pretty educated in that field, so it's very overwhelming for those young adults.
and it's overwhelming to the parents, because they got through the IEP and they're exhausted, and now we have to go through this ISP, individualized support plan. And now
Mhm.
this is it, you feel like this is the rest of your life. And unfortunately, in adult services, people change, more frequently because the
Mhm.
funding isn't there, and we kind of we're so worried. I'm, about their social life, people's social life, with disabilities. And I'm like, well, let's get them a job. Let's do
Hmm.
ticket to work. Let's, let's figure out how to navigate SSI and create impairment related work expenses and subsidies where their SSI doesn't get deducted completely. Let's use
Hmm.
Uber. I mean, some of these, the home and community based services, you can literally get transportation costs to be covered
Right.
to and from work.
Mhm.
I mean, some states are starting to do Uber, and start in the bigger cities, in the bigger burbs, um,
Yeah,
the government agencies are connected with Uber to be able to do driving, and it doesn't just have to be paratransit or shared rides, and we find community by working. We find community um, by connecting with friendships. And when you have autism, you're prone to be isolated. You're prone to be
yeah,
isolated, and you're prone to just be scrolling on your phone or scrolling on your computer and scrolling through Instagram and Facebook and all these different things. And then your circle of support gets smaller and smaller the older you
mhm,
get. And
right,
and it becomes comfortable to the parents. And this is the time when you really need to unfortunately deal with the meltdowns and deal with that sandpaper, because if you don't deal with it early, it becomes a learned behavior, and and then
absolutely.
and then they're not capable of breaking that cycle. And then when the parent is gone or there is a crisis in the family,
Mm.
it's very hard to break that habit, and I feel so bad, because
Yeah.
um I'm getting there's a thing called glass sibling children. There's siblings of adults with special needs or children with special needs, um, because they are the ones that are given all this responsibility, and they're often ignored for all of the care that needs to be
Mm.
given, or overshadowed. I don't want to say ignored, that sounds, um, but and then they feel this sense of responsibility. Well, I have clients that will say, oh, my daughter's now a special ed teacher, or my daughter is now, or my son married a nurse who wants to take over, and they do take over, but I'm finding that they're only taking over for 3 or 4 years because it becomes too overwhelming, and you're
Yeah,
asking them to be a non-empty nester. You're asking them to sacrifice their empty nesting years, and yes, they love their siblings. I'm not saying that. But is it fair? The heir and the spare, like,
right.
and so what Leahy Life Plan does is really try to walk that line, even though we all of us can't walk. All of us, navigate that fence to be able to have that best of both worlds. And it is challenging in the beginning, but I could tell you this. I have many clients that live in their own apartments or do life sharing and do all these different, not group homes. I'm not talking group homes. I'm
Hmm.
talking all these different ways,
Right.
but government's not paying for that. And so we need to think about that, and we need to plan for that sooner rather than later, and start that process, because Section 8 housing and HUD housing and all of these different vouching programs, it's getting harder to come by. Housing and affordable housing is a real crisis for this demographic, because back when the reconciliation over Ombudsman Act started in 1987, when President Reagan let all the people out of institutions, the life expectancy of people with disabilities was like 40 to 50 years old. Now we're living into our 70s and 80s. So the funding is not being replenished with the needed
Mhm.
population.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack.
So,
So, if I'm a parent and I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now,
mhm.
what would you say? What's the best place to start?
I think that the best place to start is to start journaling about all of what your child struggles with and what you do for them. And think about it in times of the day and rooms of the house. Can they use the oven? Can they microwave? Or are you making sure that there's no aluminum foil in the microwave
Yeah,
when you're packing things?
I know as a therapist, one of the things that we add as a caveat is not just can they do it, but can they do it safely?
Correct, correct. And are they on a routine to do it? And what happens if that routine is skewed? I mean, can they dress themselves and are they dressing themselves appropriately for the weather? Are would they wear, shorts in the middle of winter, or will they wear like a winter coat in the middle of summer,
Right,
And because Social Security's definition of disability is proving the inability to work. So people will say they can work, but are they working substantially? So it's not just about working, it's about working. And in 2026, if you can earn above $19,000 a year or $1,690 a month, you're considered not disabled because you're able to work substantially. Now, the
hmm,
thing is that now we need to break it down. Are they
right,
able to work? Who's driving them to work? Are they getting job coaching? Are they doing the same tasks that someone else is doing at that job? The, and that is so when you start to journal, then you go to a neuropsych and you're looking at it from an adult lens. You're not looking at it with pediatric eyes. You're looking at it with an adult set of eyes because that's how you get approved for benefits. It's about looking at it in projection mode, not in how do I scaffold this mode? What does it
right.
look like when there is no supports?
Yeah, that is so profound too. And it sneaks up on you.
Oh, it does. I mean, even though I'm over 40, I mean, and I lost my mother 3 years ago,
Mm,
and before that, when COVID happened and all that, my mom used to come down and clean my home because physically I wasn't able to do it. And so that budget now of having somebody else clean my home is real, and
right.
it's those hidden costs that nobody thinks about, and then my mother died and then my father was still alive. So no special needs trust, and then my father lived an additional 3 years. He just
Right.
recently passed. And and the thing is that, but then he went into a nursing home. So the thing is that if I had autism, if I wasn't already set and I was already, placed in, my living situation and
Hmm.
created that, I would have been completely displaced and we would have been scrambling and there would have been no choices.
Right.
Whereas, and that's, and that's the one thing that and it's hard to look at. It's so hard. I mean, the biggest fear is what's going to happen when I die. But I have to
Hmm.
say that during the 3 years after my mother passed and my father, was alive and he could no longer care for me in the way that he did before, it broke his heart. And
Yeah.
he and he felt like he prepared me for that even before my mother's death. But to see the little struggles that I had and
Hmm.
but it broke his heart, but it made him say, okay, well, this is a new strategy that we have to do. And and we do this as everyday person, when I'm sitting in a wheelchair or not. That's
Right.
We do this. But I think that parents parents are so concerned about not having the disability label and not having those things. And you know what? That label allows me to get services. That label puts me in a class to get ADA accommodations. That
Right.
label allows me to get benefits. That label gives me access. And you know what? Doesn't change who I am as a person. Still Michelle, still crocheter, still, lover of Broadway shows, and loves to go out to eat a little too much, you know. But it allows me to, make sure that when I go to a restaurant, I'm always aware if it's accessible. Like I'm always thinking ahead. And parents think ahead for their disabled children and for
Right.
their children with autism, and then they rearrange their life. They may host Thanksgiving, they may go to the same vacation spot year after year, and they may drive to places versus fly to places.
Right.
And and those things that you're doing need to those adjustments need to be journaled, because that's not a clinical diagnosis, that's a functional limitation of.
Right.
And if you could tell that to a neuropsychologist or someone who's dealing with, and you're journaling it, and then you submit that to Social Security, or you submit that to your waiver programs, to your home and community-based services programs, the services are going to be opened up to you.
Okay.
As long as you
Hmm.
haven't, you've accessed, you know, you have low resources because they can't have
Right.
any money in their name. And this is, we also do spend downs. We do, because money doesn't solve the problems, but money gives you choices to solve
Right.
those problems. And the money has to
Gotcha.
be set in a way where they can still have access to services. Okay, I'll shut up now.
No, you're fine. No, it's a huge topic. It's not one that's just easily, yeah, okay, you can get services. There's a lot of moving parts, and
Yeah.
if you don't know all of them and you miss something, then your adult child is going to miss out because they're not always forgiving, especially with the appeals and things like that. Or you might have a limited time frame in order to file that appeal and it passes and you don't realize it. And so it's so important to have that guide and that expert really walk you through the process in a way that's going to be both comprehensive and less stressful, not just for you, but for your neurodivergent loved one as well.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so tell us how did you get interested in this whole thing? Like, how did it start?
Oh, so I was a job coach and I worked for an agency that was a ticket to work, community work incentive partner. It was part of the WIPA programs, which is the work incentive planning and assistance programs that were instituted after 2008. BPAO was ceased and then it became WIPA. And so I ran um, a WIPA grant in southeastern Pennsylvania. And then I actually had some health crises, and I was a supports coordinator as well. So
Mhm.
the case manager, type of person to help
Right.
people navigate services and benefits. And then because I colored outside the lines so much, my boss, when I had a health crisis, my boss was like, "Go start your own business." So I
Right.
I really just wanted to combine the community, the government, and the financial and the legal, put them all in one underneath one umbrella.
Hmm.
You know, so to be able, because everybody knows their slice of the pie, and so I wanted you to see the whole pie at like a real, to see how each piece fits, you know, and
Right.
and we collaborate with, you know, different lawyers, different financial planners that are specialists in this, you know,
Right.
and they just really are, and a lot of, and most everybody that I work with is connected to the disability community in some situation. And so that's really important to me because I don't want to be working, and not just a parent. I want um I want someone that has like a cousin that is a little bit separated, you know, so
Right.
they can see it, but it's not super personal. But yeah, I mean, parents doing this is good as well. And I work with a lot of lawyers, but like the one of the lawyers that I work with, she was doing it before she had a disabled child. So her
Right.
perspective is so unique, you know, which was wonderful because when she had a disabled child,
Right.
um, by fluke, she was able to. When we started to work together, she wasn't only seeing it through her daughter's eyes; she was seeing it
Right. Yes.
through what does it look like from this person's perspective, because one size does not fit all,
Right.
because autism is a spectrum. So someone that is severely autistic or
Hmm.
severely impaired, they may need less money than someone who is higher functioning, that needs to live on their own, that may not
Right.
have the group home funding that someone would have that's severely, you know, nonverbal, you know, incapable, but someone who is like falling through the cracks, but not like a high like a Mark Zuckerberg or a Bill Gates or Jerry, you know, not
Right.
Jerry Seinfeld, you know, all those people that are, you know, claiming the Asperger's, but you have those. I really work well with those IQs that are 80, you know, to 134, but their executive functioning is
Hmm.
like, you know, but they need scaffolding in their environments. But
Structure. Yes. Definitely.
yes,
Routine.
yes, and and so that's, and I really got into it because as a person with a disability, I was working with that community, um, and that community reached out to me, and because I'm a proud woman with a disability. I want everybody to be proud in their neurodiversity. And but you're not getting benefits because you're neurodiverse. You're getting benefits because you meet the criteria of disability from Social Security.
Right.
And I respect no matter what your label is, but it's important to know that semantics for getting benefits and articulating struggles and deficits
Mhm.
is the way you gain access.
Yes. I think you and I talked about that when we met privately last time, how as a healthcare provider for 30 years, that's one of my strengths is being able to take the situation and apply the right phrasing and wording so that it paints the picture, but it also does it in a clinical way that's going to help meet those criteria rather than just putting a story down that's more emotionally based. Because the people that are reviewing the applicants are not basing it on the emotional base, they're basing it on the facts of black and white, what's here, what's not here.
Right, but they are also basing it on clinical but functional. So it's more like, can they microwave safely?
Hmm.
You know, it's that
Right.
occupational type of things. Yes, they can change their bed. Yes, they can change their sheets, but would they change their sheets? Do they, or would they stay up playing video games, you know, all hour? Would they forget to eat? Do they have sensory issues when they're eating? You know,
Right.
it's when you break your back or you have a physical disability, medical documentation doesn't lie, but neuropsychs and IEPs can can skew the truth without
Hmm.
when can skew what is not there when there is no assistance. I don't know if
Right.
I said that correctly, but you'll
Well,
see.
let me kind of rephrase it in the way that I heard it in from my view is that you have to kind of translate it into speaking the right language. For example, most people with autism have magical thinking. And
Mhm.
so if you ask them anything, they're going to say, "Oh, yeah, sure. Oh, so you can go out tomorrow and climb Mount Everest. Oh, yeah, I can do that. No problem. You know, I can jump that tall building in a single bound. No problem at all." When in reality, obviously, reality is a lot different. And so I think painting that picture accurately in a way that depicts this person, not just on their good days, because we all have good days and bad days, but on a bad day when they're struggling, maybe they forgot to take their meds. Maybe there's something going on in there that breaks their routine or a change in their lifestyle, or parent passes on, or moving. Somebody had to move to a different location in order to get services. You never know what can kind of break that cycle. And
Mhm.
so learning how to navigate that and being able to sort through what is fact from fiction. I know that one of the things that a lot of people with autism have is where they have trouble separating fantasy and reality.
Right,
And so if they're living in this kind of blended world of fantasy and reality, it's really hard to get a clear picture of what's going on just because, oh, I'm Superman or I'm Spider-Man or that's kind of an exaggeration, but
right,
you definitely kind of get that idea where are they going to be reliable reporters
right,
of the
exactly.
accurate ability? Yeah.
Right. And parents don't like to burst that bubble, because we want to pump them up. But in order to get services and benefits, we have to be realistic, and talk about what, their worst day versus their best day.
Yes. Yeah. And it's hard as a parent. I can definitely vouch for that, especially when the autistic individual knows what's going on
Yeah.
because nobody wants people talking about what you're terrible at or
No.
what you struggle with or embarrassing things that could come up, but you really have to be accurate and to navigate those services because ultimately that's what's going to help.
Right, right. And that's the reality, like I mean, as I tell parents all the time, I could stare at a flight of steps forever and it's never going to turn into a ramp for me. I mean, that's a saying by this lady Stella who's like from Australia, a great disability advocate, and I can't think of her last name. But the thing is that if he could do it, does he do it without prompts? Does he do it independently? Does he have the intuition to do it?
Will they initiate it?
Will
Yeah.
they initiate it? It's all about that self-initiation,
Mhm.
and I think that's something that people literally don't really understand, like
Yeah.
and they don't know how to articulate that.
What I know too from my experience is that you don't realize how different your life is. Like my whole life was one giant compensatory strategy where everything I did was in a way and in a place that could help my daughter thrive and function. And it wasn't until she was maybe 15 or 16 where we were hanging out more with the neurotypical population. And it hit me that, my day to day in my house, because it was just the two of us, looks very, very different. And to me, it was just life.
Right.
But the reason for the success and the function was because of all the little strategies you have in place that you don't even give a second thought to anymore.
Right. Right, you're on autopilot, and and so that's what we do at Leahy Life Plan is we help people really articulate and write down and convey it to their adult providers, and adult clinicians that are getting them tested to articulate that need. and that and
Hmm.
that deficit in order for them to not be able to, they need that.
Right. So do you find that there's a lot of people that need your service but don't know that they need your service?
Absolutely. I think that that is a big thing. I think that 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 many parents are wishing and hoping that that the light is going to turn on, and then when and they help them get little jobs, and they'll help them get little tiny jobs, and then when they realize that they need benefits, they're not able to access them because they've created an environment and they've created um, a history of success, but it's just over the line. It's just over the line, and they don't know how to get it underneath that line because because professionals will just look at them and say slam dunk, not a slam dunk to get services. And
Hmm.
and what we do at Leahy Life Plan is really sit with you and write all of that stuff out. Talk about what does it look like from the and we help you. We're not applying for you. We don't represent you, but
Right.
we give you the strategies and we give you, you know, templates basically, and we help work with you. It's think of us as your editor for Reader's Digest.
Right.
Like you write your drafts, and then we will connect you with neuropsychologists and different
Hmm.
evaluators in the areas that are important,
Right.
and are looking at it from a worst case scenario instead of,
Hmm.
because it's kind of a catch 22. You could be qualified for services, but you need to get a service in order to be qualified. You need to be seen as disabled in order to get the service, and then when you go to get an evaluation, they'll say, well, you could access this and this, and then you can't access this and this and this unless you're seen as disabled. But then that evaluation is not giving you enough of
Yeah.
to get approved. So you really need to have a long, hard talk with the evaluator to write an evaluation with that kind of trajectory, you know?
Yeah. And I know that this is the truth, and so I want to point this out very clearly. You're not fudging the truth or telling anybody to lie. What
No,
you are doing is you are teaching people how to properly paint the picture in words and in ways that make sense to the recipient of the paperwork.
absolutely, absolutely. That's exactly what we're doing. Because if I don't think you're qualified, I don't want you as a client. And I will
Right,
also tell you that I don't think you have enough documentation. You need to go get documentation. I'll give you referrals. Once that documentation is done or you get the evaluations, come back to me. We can review
right,
it. And then if it's good enough, then you could either come to me, or I'll give you the guidance, or
right,
or I give you the tools and you could go apply, or you could go to a lawyer, you could do whatever you want. But my thing is that when I first meet with somebody, i'm I'm not looking at their paperwork. I'm talking to the parent. I'm talking
right.
about their struggles. I'm trying to figure out, like, and then I kind of weed out what you're really saying, and
Yes, yes,
yeah, and as somebody, as a wheelchair user myself, I mean, people automatically think, oh, well, be easy, for, but even for me, it's hard sometimes for me to get, different types of benefits or different services because, if I'm able to transfer a certain amount, then that lowers my hours,
right,
and so it's like, well, I'm only able to do that, 3 out of 5, 7 days out of the week. So does that
right.
mean that I can really do it successfully? like all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. You got to add that other piece to the puzzle, paint that complete
Right,
picture.
right.
And wording is everything, and it is a skill. And I think it's important for people to understand that it's not even for well-educated, intelligent people, it's still a skill because
Oh, most of
these
my clients
places,
are well educated,
yeah,
like
these play,
because
yeah,
because they've been able to spend so much money on therapies and spend so much money to really be told that, well, if you do this, then this is going to happen. But the thing is the train has come to the last stop of the station
hmm
when you're getting to me. Like, I don't want to deal with. I am not good for your 12-year-old. Okay, I am really there for your 16 and above. Like, that is really my bailiwick. And the people that have been unsuccessful at garnering services and people that have struggled to get services, and they know they need them, but they don't know how to present it
right,
in a way. And so those are the that's the population that I really relate to.
yeah,
That's the population that I truly, because they're falling through the cracks because of the scaffolding that's being provided. Because and people don't know how to articulate that they're successful because of scaffolding. They're
yes,
they're successful because of props. They're successful because mom is following them around. Like,
hmm
picking them up from work, take driving them home from work, doing it's.
Or even giving verbal cues or supervision. You
Absolutely.
know, my daughter has a seizure disorder, so can she get a shower? Physically, she has the mobility to do it, but does she need supervision in some way to make sure that she's safe in case she does trigger a seizure while she's in the shower? You know, those are the things like we're talking about that you look at. And that's really close. And I know I keep going back to my therapy background, but that's really, really close. It's the difference between, you know, hey, she walked across the room and, instructed patient in gait training 30 feet with walker, with facilitation, da 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 da, da,
Right,
pointing out
right.
all the little things that you notice or you do as somebody who's trained to do that versus just, oh, yeah, they can do that.
Right. Well, it's just like you were talking about showering. Someone with autism will either shower for like 5 minutes and get in and get out, or they will like stand in the shower for 40 minutes. And when they get out, their hair is still greasy because they didn't use soap and there's sensory issues. You don't know this in a therapy session.
Right,
Only person that would know that would be mom or dad or their caregiver. And so, how
right,
do you write that on paper? How do you submit that as a part of the medical documentation? How
right.
do you submit that a part of non-medical documentation? And so that is what we work on.
That is so important. And now I know that you are based in Pennsylvania, in Eastern Pennsylvania. Do you have a particular service area or are you set up to service globally?
How I'm set up the service nationally, meaning in the United States. Of
Okay.
course, most of my clients are in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Maryland, and Florida. It seems like that's been, but we're
Mhm.
able to. I service 16 states and counting. So, I don't. Of course, in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, I know all the players a little bit more directly,
Right,
but the federal benefits are the federal benefits, and the home and community based services are the home and community based services because there's federal regulations with each of them. It's just the
right.
idea of what department it is, how and that's it's easy, but the
Easy for
showcasing.
you.
Sorry, I didn't mean it. Yeah. Well, yeah, but what's the difficult part is showcasing
Right.
those deficits, and connecting with lawyers, and connecting with evaluators that are that have that same trajectory, because it's really important to go to a right neuropsych and request things like an ABAS and a GARS, the Gilliam Autism Rating Scale and the executive functioning, and doing an IQ test.
Yeah.
People think that IQ tests aren't important if I have like an 80 IQ, but if your adaptive skills are lower, you might have ID. It doesn't change who the person is, but
Right.
but if you can get that ID diagnosis instead of learning disabled, then services can be a little bit easier to garner
Right.
because because people don't like that label of intellectual disability. They like learning disabled better. But learning disabled, I think of dyslexia. I'm not thinking of
Yeah.
the type of learning disability that's required for waivers. And so you
Right.
need that intellectual disability. So we could get, uh, you know, uh, two diagnoses in one. It only
Mhm.
lends and it doesn't change who your son or daughter is. They're going to be who they
Right.
are. Doesn't change who they are as a person. We're just using these things to get to the next service
Yeah.
to gain
Yeah.
access.
I know when I was in the process of getting my daughter diagnosed, the neurologist was hesitant because he didn't want to label her. And I said, well, if it's going to help her, let's call a spade so she can get services. I mean, if it
Right,
doesn't, like you're saying, it doesn't change who she is, but if
right.
on paper it's going to mean the difference between help and not getting her the right help, then I'm doing her a disservice, and you're doing her a disservice by not helping to facilitate her getting what she needs.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you. Do you find that the young adult with autism or the adult with autism can kind of struggle through this process since they are kind of having their challenges looked at, to where, I mean, none of us like having things that we're not good at pointed out. And especially if they're raised on a life of, oh, this is great, you're doing this great, you've progressed here, look how good you're doing. And then all of a sudden they're in this phase of, well, yeah, but you need help for that. Or, you know what I mean there?
Yeah. So some of the people do struggle. I would say a lot, most of them do. But 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 we're also saying, well, you're going to get health care benefits. You're getting this benefit. And we're telling them that they're going to leave their parents' benefits. And I also think that it also deals with the sense of, this is what you have to do as an adult. Like if and I think that we shield people too much and make them feel good too much, and we hide the reality of that you need to get a job in order to get health insurance, like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And if you can't, then we need to get you these benefits in order to get you health insurance. Like,
Right. And I think it goes back to that whole thing of,
and then
we are trying to fit that square peg into the round hole for so many years. Like, you have to act like society wants you to. You have to look like society wants you to. You have to behave in an expected way that society wants you to. And then you kind of turn around and do the opposite, where it's okay if we want to see those behaviors, we want to see the difficulties, we want to see, and it can really be a struggle.
but I also find that the I work more with the parents than I do with the adult with the disability, and then I coach them towards the end, and then we get buy-in based on I'm able to get a lot of buy-in from them because it's the money, it's the idea that it's taking the pressure off of them because there's
Right.
so much stress, there's so much pressure, and there's so much I gotta succeed, I'm failing, and by getting these benefits, it's kind of lifting that expectation off of them a little bit, or um that stress
Hmm.
because they're not able to handle it, and so I'm able to help coach them to say, well, this is going to relieve some of
Hmm.
some of your pressures, and and it is a struggle, but we're able to navigate. And then I tell them, go watch Elsa, let it go, let the cape go, and
Becoming the new you.
yes, and then I say, this is only time. If you can be successful, then this isn't preventing you from being, you know, successful.
Yeah, it's not changing who you are. It's opening
Absolutely
the
not.
door to support you in the long run, in the long term, so that you can not have to worry about that.
Yep, and access. It's all about gaining access.
So if somebody wanted to work with you, what's a good way for them to reach you?
So my website is leahylifeplan.com. So it's Leahy life plan, LIFEPLAN.com. And you could just Google Leahy Life Plan, or you could Google Michele Leahy with one L. It's
That's right.
Michele. I have, Leahy, Leahy. And disability life planning. That's what we do. That's what I'm known. It's that roadmap. And then you can email me. We do webinars. Every I'm doing a webinar on Tuesday. I usually do one a month at least. And they're free to attend. Just that we go over services and
Mhm.
what's available and all of that. And and then that's the way you would access me. I am private pay. I've been doing this. I have a 97% approval rating. And so please, Google me. And we're also in the process of doing some other services. It's called Gen Planning, which is a service to help people really understand how to do case management and pass that baton and do the daily skills. Because
Mhm.
ISPs and all those services are copied and pasted from year to year. It's kind of like, who are the caregivers? Who's the next in line? Who's the power of attorney? Again, it's all in the kid parent's head. So
Yeah.
we need to get it on paper. We need to give it to the next generation, and we need to create a circle of support. You know.
That is very well said. Well, Michelle, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us at Puzzled Parents and providing such a crucial service. I know that that can be something that is easily overlooked when you've got your head down and you're going to the day to day and trying to get from one day to the next. But we as parents, I always say we have to pick our head up and not just look at today, but where's this going? What's the outcome that we want? How is this going to benefit my child 5, 10, 20 years from now? So thank you so much for bringing that to the limelight and for being here today.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Susan. I'm so excited about what you're doing with Puzzled Parents.
Oh, thank you so much. And we want to thank you for tuning in and listening to Puzzled Parents today. We hope you found this helpful. And as always, if you need to reach Michelle, you can reach out at the places that she mentioned and also look for it in the description. We'll see you next time.